Did you know your quirks might be prehistoric? That the things you've always assumed were just personality, or bad luck, or a lack of willpower might actually be written into your bloodline by someone who died 40,000 years ago? Here's the strange truth. Almost everyone alive outside of Africa carries a small slice of Neanderthal DNA, somewhere between 1 and 4% of the genome. It doesn't sound like much, but that fragment is still active. It still shapes how you sleep, how you feel pain, how your body handles stress, addiction, and injury. These aren't bugs in your system. They're features, inherited from a people who survived ice ages, hunted enormous animals, and endured a world with no medicine, no shelter, and no mercy. What looks like a flaw in the modern world was often a survival tool in theirs. So before you blame yourself for being moody, or for overreacting to a paper cut, consider this. It might not be you at all. It might be them. Here are 10 weird traits you may have inherited from Neanderthals, hidden right inside your DNA, quietly revealing where your bloodline really comes from. Trait number 10, rough and spotty skin. If you've ever noticed scaly patches, stubborn rough spots, or little sun-related blemishes that never quite behave, and no amount of scrubbing or expensive product fixes them, you're not alone. Part of the explanation may be surprisingly ancient. Human skin turns out to be unusually rich in Neanderthal DNA, much of it coding for keratin, the tough protein that builds your skin, hair, and nails. Researchers have found that Neanderthal-derived variants influence keratin-producing cells and are linked to a raised risk of sun-induced skin lesions called keratosis, the scaly spots that can appear after years of light exposure. Their skin had adapted to colder, drier, lower sunlight climates than the African environments where our species first evolved. And those adaptations came with trade-offs. Thicker keratin biology and altered skin cell behavior may have helped early Eurasians cope with harsh weather and limited sun. So, if your skin feels like it's running its own stubborn agenda, it might be following instructions written for a colder, darker world, when all you wanted was for it to behave for summer. Trait number 9, being a morning person. While some people drag themselves out of bed cursing the sunrise, others snap awake at dawn, alert and irritatingly cheerful before the coffee has even brewed. If your body insists on rising early, no matter how late you stayed up, there's a good chance your internal clock is running on a much older version of human software, courtesy of Neanderthal DNA. Researchers analyzing hundreds of thousands of people found that Neanderthal gene variants consistently nudge the body clock in one direction, toward morningness, making carriers more likely to be early risers. This isn't about discipline or virtue. It's biological. Neanderthals had lived for hundreds of thousands of years at high latitudes, where daylight swung dramatically between seasons. A faster-running internal clock that could anticipate and adapt to those shifting light levels was genuinely useful, helping the body sync with sharply changing days and the long, dark stretches of northern winters. So, if you're wide awake and ready before everyone else, it's not just good habits. Your DNA may simply be keeping ancient hours. Trait number 8, heightened sensitivity to pain. You know those people who stub a toe and then dramatically limp around the room like they've been shot? What if it isn't theatrics at all? What if some people are genuinely wired to feel more pain than everyone else, all because of their ancient ancestors? Scientists have identified 3 variants in a gene called SCN9A, carried over from Neanderthals, that are linked to a lower pain threshold. This gene helps control how your nerves generate and send pain signals to the brain, and these variants appear to make those sensory neurons fire more readily. So if you carry them, your pain threshold really is lower, but not because you're weak. Your nerves are simply more reactive. Your body is shouting where everyone else's is only whispering. Tens of thousands of years ago, this made sense. In a world of sharp rocks, hard falls, and constant physical hazards, feeling certain kinds of pain quickly could push you to react before a small injury became a deadly one. Neanderthals had no painkillers and no urgent care. So next time someone calls you oversensitive, tell them it's ancient biology, still trying to keep you alive. Trait number 7, the risk of nicotine addiction. Some people can smoke a single cigarette at a party and never think about it again. Others try it once and suddenly they're slipping out of meetings to light up behind the dumpster. It turns out, this difference might not be about willpower at all. It could trace all the way back to your Neanderthal ancestors. In a large study comparing genes with medical records,
Researchers found that a specific piece of Neanderthal DNA significantly raises the risk of nicotine addiction. The variant appears to influence how the brain's reward system responds to stimulation, especially dopamine, the chemical behind pleasure and reinforcement. A reward system tuned to respond strongly may have been an advantage in prehistoric times. When survival was a daily fight, a powerful response to rewards like food, fire, or warmth pushed people to take risks, explore, and try difficult things that might just pay off. A sharp dopamine spike was the brain's way of saying, "That worked, do it again." But today, that same ancient system gets hijacked by nicotine, a substance that hits fast, fades fast, and keeps you coming back, and that doesn't know it isn't a mammoth steak. Trait number 6, a tendency toward thiamine trouble. Here's one almost nobody talks about. Some people seem to run low on energy, struggle with carbohydrate-heavy modern diets, or feel the effects of poor nutrition faster than others. And part of the reason might be buried in Neanderthal DNA. Researchers studying Neanderthal variants in modern medical records found alleles that affect the transport of thiamine, also known as vitamin B1, a nutrient your body uses to turn carbohydrates into usable energy. In Neanderthal times, this was unlikely to be a problem. Their diet leaned heavily on meat and nuts, foods naturally rich in thiamine, so a transport system tuned for that kind of intake worked perfectly well. The mismatch only shows up now. Drop that same ancient system into a modern world of processed food, refined sugar, and heavily carbohydrate-based meals. And some researchers suggest carriers of these variants may be more prone to running short on B1. It's a quiet example of the same theme running through all of this. A body optimized for one world, set down in a completely different one. Your metabolism may still be shopping for a Stone Age menu. One thing before the final pieces. Everything I just showed you about the Neanderthal DNA hiding in your body is traceable inside your own DNA results. I wrote the guide for exactly that. It's called Where Do You Really Come From? The link is below. Now, here's what nobody talks about. Trait number 5, depression and mood disorders. Have you ever felt like your emotional baseline sits just a little lower than everyone else's? Like you're more sensitive to stress, quicker to slip into a low mood, or simply feel everything a bit too deeply? It might not be that your life is harder than other people's. It might partly be your wiring, and that wiring could reach back to the Ice Age. In one of the first large studies comparing Neanderthal DNA with real medical records, researchers found that a number of Neanderthal variants influence the risk of depression, some raising it and some lowering it. Scientists suspect part of this connects to how these genes interact with light exposure and the body's internal clock, systems that mattered enormously at high latitudes with long, dark winters. Being attuned to environment and threat may have been protective for people surviving harsh, unpredictable conditions. But today, that same sensitivity can surface as low mood or a tendency to spiral when life turns chaotic. It doesn't mean your fate is sealed. Brains are flexible and environment matters enormously. But part of you may still be bracing for a world that no longer exists. Trait number 4, autoimmune and immune tendencies. Your immune system is supposed to protect you, but sometimes it behaves like that one overzealous friend who treats absolutely everything as a threat. A bit of pollen? Hostile. A harmless food? Suspicious. Your own body? Apparently the enemy. If you've ever battled mysterious inflammation, strange allergies, or an autoimmune condition, some of it might trace back to Neanderthal DNA. Researchers have found that several immune system genes inherited from Neanderthals are still active in modern humans, and studies have linked some of these archaic variants to a more aggressive innate immune response, as well as to allergies and asthma. These genes helped early humans survive in environments full of unfamiliar pathogens, where a fast, fierce immune reaction could mean the difference between shrugging off an infection and dying from it. That was a powerful advantage when nearly everything around you could carry something dangerous. But in today's cleaner, more controlled world, that same heightened defense system can overreact, turning on harmless particles or even your own tissue. It isn't hypochondria. It's an ancient army still primed for a war that, for most of us, is long over. Trait number 3, increased blood clotting. Picture a Neanderthal moving across rough, frozen ground, hunting something large and dangerous, and taking a hard fall. There are no stitches, no sterile bandages, no hospital waiting. If the bleeding doesn't stop quickly, that injury can be fatal. That's the world where aggressive blood clotting traits made perfect sense. In their large analysis of Neanderthal DNA and modern medical records, researchers found variants associated with blood clotting, the body's ability to seal a wound fast. Back then, a strong, rapid clotting response was life-saving, improving the odds of surviving injuries, childbirth, and the constant physical hazards of a brutal environment. But here's the catch. That same fast clotting tendency can become a liability in modern life. We're no longer fending off large predators or treating deep wounds in the wild. Instead, we sit for long hours, fly across continents, and live with stresses and diets that can quietly raise clotting risk. In some people carrying these variants, that can contribute to dangerous clots. So, if a doctor ever tells you your blood clots a little too eagerly, know that it isn't random. It's still braced for a much harsher world. Trait number 2, the shape of your skull. Run your fingers along the back of your head. If there's a slight bony bump low at the rear, or if your head feels a little longer front to back than perfectly round, you might be carrying a faint architectural signature left behind by Neanderthals. Their skulls were famously distinct, longer and lower than ours, often with a pronounced bulge at the back that scientists call the occipital bun. Research analyzing brain scans alongside genetics has found that certain Neanderthal-derived variants subtly influence the shape of the human skull and the brain regions beneath it, particularly areas involved in vision and movement. In Neanderthal times, that kind of wiring may have supported sharp visual processing and fine bodily control, exactly what you'd want when tracking prey across a frozen, low-light landscape where a single missed movement meant going hungry. Today, the effect is extraordinarily subtle, nothing you would ever spot in a mirror. But for some people, it's quietly there, a faint imprint on the very container that holds your thoughts, a blueprint sketched out tens of thousands of years ago. Trait number 1, the face of an ancestor. Look in the mirror, a heavier brow, a strong bone above the eyes, a broad nose, a solid jaw, and substantial cheekbones. We can't say these features prove you inherited a particular Neanderthal gene, but they do echo the unmistakable look of the people whose DNA still moves through us. Neanderthals were built to endure. Their skulls carried thick, prominent brow ridges, wide nasal openings, and heavy, powerful facial bones, shaped by hundreds of thousands of years in a cold and punishing world. That architecture wasn't random. A large nose helped warm and humidify freezing air before it reached the lungs. Robust bone anchored strong chewing muscles, useful when your diet was tough and your teeth often doubled as tools. A pronounced brow added strength to a skull that absorbed real physical punishment. Living humans don't carry that face wholesale, but faint echoes of it surface again and again across populations descended from those ancient encounters. So when you catch a certain ruggedness looking back at you, remember it belongs to a very long line of survivors. So here's what all of this really means. Every one of these traits, the stubborn skin, the early mornings, the low moods, the cravings, the face in the mirror, is a thread tying you to people who walked this earth tens of thousands of years before you were born. They weren't brutish failures or evolutionary dead ends. They were survivors, builders, hunters, and parents who endured ice ages and outlasted a world that would destroy most of us within a week. And they didn't simply vanish. They live on, quietly, inside you. That 1 to 4% of Neanderthal DNA isn't a footnote, it's a fingerprint. It's part of why your body still behaves, now and then, as though it's bracing for a colder, harsher, more dangerous world, even while you sit somewhere warm and safe and modern. So the next time you feel like your quirks make you strange, remember, they may also make you ancient. They make you the living result of a bloodline stretching back across hundreds of generations. You are the latest chapter of a very long story. We explain a lot around here, so subscribe and stay curious about where you really come from, because your DNA still remembers.